Okay, I think we are good now. Good morning, the people on this side of the pond, and good morning or good evening, the people back home on the other side of the pond. Our topic today is on land helplessness. And as usual, we will start with Saya, who usually gives us a small hotuba. Is he in or out? He'll give us an introduction to the topic in a way he only he does, and then I will start with the panelists. Saya, I think I see you. Saya, go on. Okay, before Saya tries to join in, because I think he was kicked out of the Zoom. I'll let the panelists introduce themselves just so that we know each other and know each other properly. And then when Saya is on, he can do the needful. So let me start with ladies first. Trish, if you're able, just introduce yourself to us.
Wait, me?
Ladies first.
Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. Today I'm like super all over the place, jet lag and all that good stuff. But my name is Patricia Parker. As Posa had mentioned, I went to St. George's Primary School, so I guess that's where the connection comes in. I am a special education teacher. Started my career off in banking and then made the major switch to education. So I teach students with autism predominantly in high school, in a school in the Bronx. So the largest school district in the world primarily. So yeah, that's what I do.
Okay. Tom Austin, because alphabet. Obuluta, Dr. Yeah, Austin, go ahead. And we're going to use Austin. I don't call you Tom.
Thank you so much, Posa, for this opportunity. I have joined these sessions before. I think this is my fourth one now. So what do you want to know about me? I'm a counseling psychologist for the last 17 years. And currently I work in Nairobi. Previously I've worked outside of Kenya. And my areas of specialization are mainly in family therapy, addictions, counseling, and counseling at the workplace. So it's my pleasure to be here today.
Okay, Tom Arodi, go ahead.
Thank you, Posa. My name is Tom Arodi. I'm a HR professional, just under 20 years of practice in Kenya. I'm currently speaking with you guys from Ethiopia. It's my second session with you, and I'm happy to be here.
Okay. Saya, are you with us now? Okay, Saya seems to have vanished. He will do his.
Posa, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Oh my God. Okay, you're Karen. Okay, Karen, Saya, go ahead. Just introduce yourself to us and then do your hotuba.
Okay, my name is Saya Jackson, joining with my wife's handle, that it's Train Karen. I am a transitions coach and I run a Christian ministry that is involved in building transition competent individuals. So today we are looking at an interesting topic, and I was reminded an interesting story of two tribes that were going out to war. And as it was done, war was done in those days, they met at this place where there was something dividing them, I think a valley or a river between them. So both, you can imagine the scene, it's tense. Tribe 1 is coming from the other side of the river and tribe 2 is coming from the other side of the river. Then there's that tense moment when both tribes have done their formation, and all of a sudden tribe A does something very unexpected. They turn on each other, and for what seemed like a lifetime to the other tribe B, but really was just a few minutes, they demonstrated violence on each other, beat each other up with such venom and After those few minutes, they stood, lined up, and looked at the tribe B and said, now we are ready. It had the desired effect. Tribe B members looked at each other and the message was clear. If they've done this to each other, what will they do when they lay hands on us? And Tribe B fled the battleground and Tribe A won. Tribe B ended up feeling helpless, completely helpless by just observing what was happening on the other side. Let's park that story for a minute and let's go to a song maybe you sang, depending with which side of the country or of the world you grew. In Kenya, we sang a song that went something like, mkono wangu mdogo, we mkono wangu mdogo, we hawezi fanya kazi. For those who don't understand Swahili, it's children saying, my small hand cannot do any work. And then the song continues to say, lakini mama mpenzi, we nitakuwa mkubwa, nitafanya kazi. My dear loving mother, when I get older, I will do work. You know, I'll iron, I'll wash, I'll do that. It's all sweet and interesting when it's coming from a child. But when you think about it practically, this child will not grow up with a belief that their hand is small and powerless. And then when they reach of age, they miraculously will be able to use those same hands to do any work. The transition from a small helpless hand to a powerful arm is not a miraculous instantaneous thing. It's a work of practice. So in fact, if this child just keeps singing that song the rest of their life as they grow older, 8, 9, 10, 12, 15, that mkono wangu ni mdogo, my hand is still small, trust you me, they will reach 18 and still believe the same thing, that their hand is small, and keep kicking down the road the belief that there's going to be some perfect future time when their hand will be miraculously stronger and become better. Let's park story number 2 and let's pick story number 3. My country is Kenya, though I'm currently not based there. And one of our several interesting facts is we never quite stop doing politics. What we do is we vote to end the respective season of politics. And then immediately we walk out from the polling station, we begin the next season of politics. So right now we are towards the tail end of the 2017 to 2022 politicking season. And regardless of what the Supreme Court decides tomorrow, soon we will be beginning the 2022 to 2027 political season. But one of the key features of a political season, like this particular one that is coming to an end, is the issue of money, or to put it just very directly, is voter bribery. It may be given more sophisticated names, where the belief is that you need to give would-be voters money for them to do anything in the voting process, for them to attend your rallies, for them to vote for you, for them to do anything. In the just recently past elections, the turnout has been very wanting. There's actually debate, and it's part of the matter being litigated, about the actual turnout percentage. But what we do know is that around 30-something% of Kenyans did not show up. What was curious is that during the voting season, one of the things that came out is many individuals came out and said, we were not facilitated to vote. In other words, they were simply saying they were not paid to go and exercise the democratic right. They had the limbs, and many people live not too far from their polling stations, so they have the wherewithal to do it. But just because they were not paid to go and vote, many sat home, let me use that word, helpless, or so they believed that they were helpless, so they could not go to the voting station to determine their future. And we've been through this cycle multiple times. A year now, or in typical opening fashion, the parliamentarians will go and hike their salaries or make all manner of noise about their salaries, and we'll begin calling them MPs. Yet, it is to a good degree the helpless individuals who sat at home who would have contributed to putting them there. And then the next 5 years will be spent with us complaining about the quality of leadership we got. Yet when we are given an opportunity, if we are not given money to show up to vote, we sit back as though we were helpless. Let's stitch those three stories together. And I'll use something from the field of learning science to do so. In learning science, we have three zones where learning happens. Just think about it like three concentric circles. Concentric means there's a small circle surrounded by a slightly bigger circle and then by an even bigger circle. So the innermost circle would be your current zone, your comfort zone, things you know, things you can. I can wake you up tomorrow early in the morning and you can be able to do it without thinking twice, you know. That would be probably psychology for Belutza, or it would be something HR for Arodi. That's probably their current comfort zone. The outermost circle, the circle that is completely outside, it's called the zone of overwhelm. This is something which with your current resources and knowledge is a task which, if asked to do, would prove to be exceedingly overwhelming. That would be, I imagine, asking Obolutsa to build a rocket or asking Arodi to build the next supercomputer. No pun intended about their abilities, but it's something completely outside of their current ability. Can they get there? Yes. But can they do it now? No. So remember, inmost is your zone of comfort. Extremely out there is your zone of overwhelm, things you can't do. But according to learning science, growth happens between these two. If you stay in your comfort zone, you don't grow. If you try in your overwhelm, you will give up. But growth happens somewhere here in between. And that middle circle is called the zone of proximal development. But growth there is not automatic. Two things need to be balanced, and that is the challenge you are presented with versus the support you are provided. If any of these two things are out of balance, learning will not happen. When you're given too big a challenge and too small support, too little support, level of support, what happens is overwhelm that leads you to give up. But the converse is equally true. That when you're given too small a challenge, but too much help, what ends up happening is what we call learned helplessness. It's almost like going to a gym, and instead of being given weights that challenge you, you're given perfume cans. And then even after being given perfume cans, the gym instructor is there to help you lift those perfume cans. Not only will you not develop muscle, but also later on when you'll be given something which really is within your weight ability, you will not be able to lift because you A, believe you need something lighter, and B, you will always believe you need somebody to help you lift the weights. That in the line of learning as it is in the line of physical development is what is called learned helplessness. And you begin seeing in these three seemingly disjointed stories how we beat people psychologically, how we fail to exercise our democratic rights. And the stories keep going all over. Learned helplessness has an immense, immense cost. And it's a discussion we cannot keep kicking down the road. It is time we had an authentic conversation around this issue of what causes it, how can we prevent it, but more importantly, how can we overcome learned helplessness? Back to you in studio.
Thank you very much, Saya. And so, of course, I'll pass the back to Thomas Austin. Dr. Austin, as the psychologist on the panel, would you give us a definition of what learned helplessness is? And if you could just demystify where this theory started from and if it's still relevant in the current age. Yes.
Thank you, Posa, for the question. So in practice, we understand that learned helplessness is a perception. A perception in the sense that one looks at their situation in terms of their behaviors and outcomes. So you find as a theory, it assumes that individuals seek explanations for events, particularly negative events such as school failure, interpersonal problems, poor health, or loss in sports, or even some of the examples that Saya has just given. And then with this kind of explanations and attributions, the individual is influenced in terms of their behavior in the future. So they have future expectations that determine their behavioral responses. And some of these responses will either be the person is passive, sometimes the individual will have anxiety problems or depression. Now also, learned helplessness can be found in children. And you find sometimes children who have experienced learned helplessness, they can attribute their failures to their lack of ability. So you find that at times it's not even about the ability of the child who is making them to progress in their academics. So as a theory, this theory was started by someone called Seligman. Seligman is a psychologist, a behavioral psychologist. And according to him, depression is a learned behavior. So of course, for those who are biologically inclined, there are those who talk about it from a point of view of neuroscience. But for him, it's like when people say they are depressed, it's like you have learned to become depressed. So it occurs to people who believe that their failures are due to uncontrollable events, and their failure will continue as long as those events are beyond their control. So to him, depression arises from helplessness. Now, they did studies for them to test this theory. I know some of these studies cannot receive ethics approvals these days, because what they did is that they took groups of dogs, three groups of dogs. The first group of the dogs was put in a cage and they were exposed to electric shock. And when they were exposed to this electric shock, they had nowhere to escape from. Then the second group of dogs was exposed to a room that also had electric shock. But then these dogs, when they were exposed to this shock, they were able to step on a panel and the shock stopped. Then the third group of dogs was just put in a room and there was no shock. And so what happened is that now they interchanged these dogs from their original rooms to a different room. And the first group of dogs that had been exposed to a room that had shock, and there was no way of escaping that shock, when they were put in the room where they could press a panel, the dogs did not press the panel. So it's like they had already become helpless. They knew that we are going to get shocked and there's no control over it. So in this case, then they then attribute these studies to individuals, and they started to do human studies just to understand, are we able to control outcomes in terms of our behavior? So they did a study with college students. Again, they had three groups of the college students and exposed them to noise. So the first group, they were put in a group in a room where there was noise, and they were wrongly told that pushing the button would end the noise. But then they pushed those buttons and the noise didn't end. Then the second group again was put in a room with noise. They pushed the button and the button and the noise ended. And the final group was placed in a room that had no noise. So again, the same students were then interchanged into the other rooms. And those that were in the first group where there was a button that they were pushing and the noise was not ending, when they were put in the second room, they didn't even bother to press the button so that the noise can stop. So in this case, again, it's like the individuals had learned to become helpless of their situation. So that's how I would want to introduce the topic of learned helplessness, that it's really basically about your perception about your behavior and your outcomes, and that as we perceive this behavior and outcomes, we are also giving ourselves explanations. So what is it that you are telling yourself that makes you understand your situation? Over to you, Posa.
Okay, thank you. And I'll just go quickly to Trish, because she's our Mwalimu on the board and also our special needs person. And how does this show up in your people, Trish?
Hi, thanks for the opportunity, Posa. So within education, special education more predominantly, we find that students with autism, you know, their brains are wired a little differently. So when we get them in kindergarten, pre-K and all that stuff, they're used to people doing things for them because, oh, you know, I'm Tatoaezi, so everything gets done for them. So by the time they get to us, they have quote unquote learned helplessness. So we kind of have to work in reverse to break that cycle where a lot of people will say, oh, my child won't speak. But tendency is your child will hold your hand and walk you to the refrigerator and then you'll know, oh, they want food. So you don't encourage them to speak. And therefore you're encouraging learned helplessness where they know that they just need to hold your hand and you know what to give them. So we tend to insist that the child verbalizes or uses their communication device to explain what it is that they want. Within the general education setting, I could use mathematics as an example. A lot of us say that I can't with math, and we just don't put in the effort because maybe we have tried to do math and it's not working out, your grades are not that great. And I believe, as Saya had mentioned, there's the possibility where, you know, the challenge was great, but the support given to you was not enough. And therefore to you, you just know math, I can't. And so you don't even put in the effort to try and do it because the supports you were given were not adequate enough. So there you now learn, you become helpless when it comes to math. You're just like, I can't. So you don't even bother to try. So as mentioned by Dr. Thomas, it's your perception of what is based on experiences that you have encountered. So if your experience with math was not that great and you didn't get the support, your perception is, I can't with math. Students with autism, or should I say developmental disabilities, it's more or less, they sit and they know that somebody's going to come to their aid and do whatever it is that needs to be done. So that's what they do. They'll sit and they'll wait. But you have to decondition that and recalibrate so that they know that they need to ask for help. More often than not in the classroom, learned helplessness is perceived by the child just will not ask for help. So you're constantly the one initiating the support. So they learn that if I sit and wait, support will come. So that's also another aspect that we find with learned helplessness within the classroom. So I hope that gives a little bit of an idea of what happens in the class when we discuss learned helplessness.
Okay, Tom, so these students
Also, if I may add.
Oh yes, go ahead, Austin.
So with students, what I've seen is that it kind of creates a vicious cycle. So you find, for example, there are those that feel that they are unable to succeed and are unlikely to put much effort into their schoolwork, which then decreases their chances of success, leading to even less motivation and less effort. So you find that the student, this cycle may make the student have virtually no motivation to learn a subject. And the consequence is that now they also become not competent in that subject. Even worse, again, it could even lead to a general sense of helplessness in the sense that the student has no belief in their ability and no motivation to learn any other subject at school. So you'll find maybe, as Trish has said, maybe the student was having a challenge in mathematics, but then this helplessness gets transferred to other subjects that the student was actually competent in before. Yeah, so that's what I wanted to add, that it creates a vicious cycle.
Okay, thank you. Tom, these students end up at your workplace. How are they showing up and HR is able to pick up that this is learned helplessness, and what exactly do they do?
Well, at the workplace, there are several triggers of learned helplessness. Basically, a number of us have worked in organizations or taken up roles where you're told, you propose a given idea, and the response is, no, we've never done it like that, or we tried this and it failed, or this is the way we've been doing our work ever since. So there are situations where when team members face those kind of feedback from their colleagues, then they tend not to propose ideas on how to improve their workflows, for example. You end up having people who are demotivated. They're no longer being innovative at their workplaces. Poor outputs obviously comes as a result of that. There's very little interest in going to work on time. People are basically just punching the clock, doing the bare minimum. Also, you will notice that they will not be escalating issues. If you're a team leader, for example, you have a team that has always been voicing their concerns and they don't feel like there's any change that is coming their way. Then when you're having the team meetings, for example, you realize that they're no longer proposing any ideas on how to get solutions to the challenges that they're facing. The other issue that you can notice in your employees when they're having a learned helplessness, for example, in the service industry, maybe the airlines, the internet service providers. I'm using very practical cases for the Kenyan context, for example, where you have to keep lying. The employees have to keep lying about certain timelines for service restoration, for example, timelines for refunds or the like. At some point, they stop lying for you. They just no longer courteous. They're no longer giving those nice to hear stuff to your clients. The other bit also is. Absenteeism also shows when people are faced with these kind of scenarios where you'll have your staff not being dedicated to their regular roles. They have to start missing work because the environment is also not very conducive for them. And some of the triggers, leave alone the effects. I also want to talk about the triggers in terms of some of the triggers that can happen at the workplace could also include this workplace politics, where there are power plays that your employees get caught in between, and they feel so helpless because usually there could be between different groups or different people of different power levels in the organization. So at the end of it all, they feel caught up in the middle and decide not to act on their regular work or escalate to either of the parties on some of the issues that they're facing. Another trigger of the helplessness can also come from the workload itself, where you have a supervisor who is really giving lots of unrealistic timelines or deadlines to their colleagues. They can also be, you have scenarios where there are team leaders or supervisors who send emails without regard to the timing of their emails and the impact that it has on their colleagues. You have emails that are flooded into your colleagues' email inboxes at about 4 a.m. in the morning, and you're the same time zone. When they wake up, they start with a very high pressure on their plate, and therefore they start feeling like they're not able to achieve, and that helplessness can actually impact on their interest to continue serving or giving their best at the workplace. I'll stop there for now as we continue this conversation. Thank you.
Okay. Sir, I just wanted to comment because you had a short foray into the world of university teaching. How does it show up in older students? Because Trish basically deals with the younger people. How does it show up in the mature students?
In a number of ways. Number one is an inability to cope, and part of like what Mwalimu said there, the belief that some of these subjects are harder than should be. So just for context, I was lecturing individuals who are upgrading from diploma level to degree level, but the time between for when they did their diploma, now they're upgrading to their degree, was in most cases like 20 years. These were fairly older individuals. So for many of them, it manifested in a certain romance with the way they used to do things, the way they had learned things in the lab and everything, and at their management levels, and were unwilling, those inflexibility to learn or to accommodate, and just a general belief that this subject is hard. Although also teaching younger people, the same learned helplessness manifested itself in just the belief that all that is needed for school is cram and repeat, just regurgitate. So there's no I noticed quite an amount of individuals who were not keen to learn, to like really learn. All they really wanted to do was cram and then regurgitate, and any attempt to make them think or apply or contextualize was then viewed as punishment. It was met with a lot of hostility. Yet another category of learned helplessness is actually the whole phenomenon of copying. People who, and I remember asking some, both schoolmates and students who who failed to understand that I went to a high school that gave me exposure into what the mindset of copying, and it's very hard to copy an exam and I'm invigilating because I almost know the psychology. And when you talk to them, one of them told me something that was very interesting. They say, I read, but I cannot trust my mind. So I just need this material that I sneak into the classroom as backup so that in the case I cannot trust my mind, I can always glance at this material or glance at somebody else. The other mindset that revealed the helplessness was just the belief and behavior that school was procedure. It was just, it really didn't quite matter, but all you just really needed was the papers so that the next thing could happen. So how you go through school doesn't quite matter as long as you can be able to learn your hand on the papers. And so overall, the learned helplessness in advanced setting ended up making education extremely transactional. It could just basically be boiled down to, you teacher, give us the notes, we will give you back your notes in the form of answers. You will be happy and give us marks and we will go. No learning will have happened, no transformation will have happened, no innovation will have happened. Everyone will be happy and all will be able to go their own way. Those are some of the ways and coupled with that is people then trying to use non-education means to influence outcomes. So students who are extremely kind to you, who want to give you lifts, who want to almost guilt trip you to try, students calling you randomly at 10 or 11 in the night to allegedly just inquire on you. And you almost think like if you use that same effort to study, you just do well. You don't need to go this way. But yeah, so some of the manifestations in my stint at lecturing that I did notice.
Okay. I just want to ask, is there a team of people who are justified to be land helpless Kizungu? Austin, I know you mentioned people with anxiety and depression, and I know people experiencing domestic or intimate partner violence experience some of it. Are they, is it, I don't know, for lack of a better word, is there a team of people whose learned helplessness is understandable?
Thank you for the question. Is it justifiable or understandable to experience helplessness? I think because of the circumstance, I will say it is typical of the circumstance. So like in the instance of learned helplessness in relationships and domestic violence. So for example, you find we meet clients who have come for counseling, or sometimes we meet patients in the hospital and the doctor will say, this client claims they fell on the bathroom, but we actually know that this is a victim of abuse. So of course, in such instances, like for me, I try to interpret it in the same way as the experiment with the dogs or the experiment with the students, in the sense that the abusers have a typical way of behaving with their victims or with the recipients of their abuse. So first, you'll find the abusers is like they administer electric shocks on the individual. So here is like the victim gets acclimatized to the abuse. They kind of learn that they do not have control over the situation. My husband is drinking, so it is his drinking that is making him to be abusive. and I cannot control his drinking. Then, of course, the abusers maintain complete control, and the victims learn that they're helpless about their circumstances. So you'll find maybe someone has been told to minimize socializing with their relatives and friends. Maybe someone has been told to minimize their career progression because the abuser is really trying to control them. Then, of course, the other thing that ends up happening now is that the victim lacks motivation or even effort to escape on their part. And just as the dogs in those experiments, they learn that no matter what they do, they will still be shocked, and they will continue to experience the powerlessness and the control of their abusers. So in such a case, then you see, you can say that they are justified to be in the situation of learned helplessness because there is a cycle that takes place. Just as we talk about the cycle in the education setting, there's also this cycle in the relationship. In the sense, you can look at stages and how the behavior of the individual is. So like in the first stage, you find there is tension that is building in the relationship. In the second stage, there is acting out in terms of the abuse. In the third stage, you find there is a honeymoon stage in the sense that the individual is apologetic. They may even be giving you gifts of money or trips. And you see that this individual is actually remorseful about what they did. Then in the fourth stage, there's a period of calmness, and then it goes back to stage one. So for us, when we do counseling, we try to help the individuals to see, are you experiencing this cycle of abuse? And are you able to identify at which stage you are at in order to know what kind of intervention am I going to expose myself to? However, one of the things I have learned over the years is that learned helplessness has several associations, if I may use that word. For example, when you look at age, who is more likely to experience learned helplessness? Is it a younger person or an older person? So there's that question that we ask ourselves in terms of age and learned helplessness. The other association is about stress. People who have experienced or who have low coping skills in terms of dealing with stress are also likely to experience learned helplessness. The other one is about anxiety and worry, especially for students. Again, we find there's also that association. The other one is also about anticipation of pain. So like in the case of domestic violence, we've also find that association. Then in health situations, like when I was working in hospital, those who are experiencing negative health outcomes. So for example, my viral load as a HIV positive person, my viral load as a HIV positive person, my viral load is unmanageable. I have been on first line drugs, they have not worked. I've been on second line drugs, they are not working. I'm now on a regime of medication that has been put together by the clinical specialist, and again, there is no progress. So it's like an individual starts to experience learned helplessness. I've also seen it with the patients who had drug-resistant tuberculosis. So the first line of treatment did not work for their TB. The second line of drugs also did not work. So now again, the clinical specialists have put in place a medical regimen for them just to try and manage their TB. Again, so with this kind of negative health symptoms, I've also seen that kind of association for learned helplessness. Then at the workplace is turnover intentions. I know my colleague Tom can talk more about that in terms of turnover intentions. So you find you have employees who are working for you, but they're using the employer's time to look for the next job. They're using the current employer's resources to look for the next job. Then something that many of us in the helping professions experience is burnout. So you have teachers who are burnt out, you have doctors who are burnt out, you have bankers who are burnt out. They are emotionally exhausted. They do not see success in what they are doing. They're even cynical to their clients. And then, of course, loneliness. There are those who experience loneliness with the land helplessness. There are those who also experience things to do with the shyness, anxiety, and of course, the one that is mainly seen in our settings is depression. So with these associations, I would say that yes, there are those who are justified to experience land helplessness. However, it is something that with some coping skills, with some interventions, then we'll be able to get out of this cycle of land helplessness.
Okay.
Over to you.
Thank you, Austin. I just want us to see the role of institutions in terms of either perpetuating land helplessness or at least cutting that. It's Sabbath. It's not Sabbath. Cutting that crap out of land helplessness. And Austin, are you able to talk to us about what the Pygmalion effect is? I'm going to put a picture up so that if, you tell us, and then let's go through the institutions and see and answer that question. Is it okay? Austin, do I need to put?
Just put it up.
Okay, let me hunt for it. Okay, let me share. Is that visible to everyone? Are you able to see that?
Yes, it is visible.
Oh, okay. Austin, are you able to, let me see if there's a better one. Okay. Okay, I'm on clearly I'm on the wrong side. Let me look for a better picture, then we can discuss that. But you can just start and then let me hunt for the picture. Or Austin, do you want us to move to something else?
I can talk briefly about it, and maybe the other panelists can add.
Mm-hmm.
So when you talk about the Pygmalion effect, you remember when you talked about at the beginning when we're looking at the definition of land helplessness, we talked about behavior and outcomes. Now, are you able to control your behavior and are you able to control your outcomes? And one of the ways that people try to control their behaviors and outcomes is through their expectations. So when we come to the Pygmalion effect, it's really about you as an individual having high expectations. And because of you having those expectations, then you work towards improving your performance in a given area. At the workplace, I expect to be promoted. So I work very hard towards fulfilling my high expectations. So that's one of the things that I look at. And then high expectations, they lead to better performance, and low expectations lead to worse performance. In counseling, we've also had clients who develop what we call self-fulfilling prophecies or self-fulfilling beliefs. And here, again, we start working towards saying, if I have a low expectation about the behavior and the outcome, then it means what the results that I'm going to get are also going to be having, they will have a belief related to that expectation. So that's how I try to understand this effect. So our beliefs influence our actions influence other people's beliefs, and other people's beliefs again influence other people's actions, which then come back to influence our beliefs. So for example, Saya gave the example of the politicians and the electorate. We believe that politicians are supposed to give us tokens of appreciation because we voted for them. So every time you go to a politician, you're expecting something to come out of their hand, you know. In as much as they will come to campaign with their manifestos, they will come to give us the best ideas. After the campaign meeting, someone will say, "Nasukari iko," you know. So now what happens to the politicians? The politicians know that for me to be able to convince the electorate, I need to go with a token of appreciation. But then where do I get resources to get these tokens of appreciation that I'm going to give to the electorate? So you find the electorate has a certain belief of the politician, and then that in effect influences the action of the politicians towards the electorate and vice versa. So that's how I'm trying to understand this effect. Over to you, Arodi or Trish, to add.
Trish and Tom, do you have any addition to the Pygmalion effect? And if you can throw in gaslighting over there, we will be happy. If someone can just, because I'm thinking, if someone has low expectations of me, won't I just be wallowing in the miasma of land and helplessness? Tom and Trish?
So, Tom, you want to go first, or should I go?
Just go ahead.
Okay. So in the realm of education, some teachers can be responsible for perpetuating self-helplessness, because like I had mentioned, we give assignments or assessments that are difficult. Granted, yes, you're supposed to push the envelope so that you challenge people to go above and beyond. However, if we don't give adequate support, then you're in essence kind of like breaking the spirit of the student. And understand that in most cases, so I teach between middle school into high school. That's your formative years. That's when people are battling with adolescence and all this other stuff. So it's incumbent upon us to give support, not only educational support, but also the emotional support to support the student to know that they can do it, you know. But you find in most cases, due to burnout, as mentioned, being overwhelmed. In America, we don't really have this problem, but it's starting to creep up. You're one person in the class of almost 40 students. Some are coming with their behavioral issues and all this other stuff. So in essence, the teacher does not have the capacity to support each and every student like she should. So you may have those students who fall through the cracks and don't get the support that they need. And they're just like, you know, they have the defeatist attitude and say, I just can't, math is not for me. And then they just, you know, don't put in the effort. But somebody had mentioned, that I don't know who, that your teacher's conditions is your students' learning conditions. So the teacher's working condition translates to how the students are going to learn, because that's going to be their learning conditions. So if teachers are not supported and we feel helpless in situations like, what can I do in this situation? I'm not getting the support that I need. It's going to trickle down. And then students are not going to get what they need. And then they're going to be like, okay, I can't do it because I've tried and I've just failed. So yes, you know, we can be responsible. However, it's a domino effect. It's a trickle down effect. Saya had mentioned the situation where they receive students and those students can basically do nothing at the higher levels. But we also have to understand that if I learn helplessness in standard 1, I start getting left back with the material. So as I go forward, now it becomes compounded. It's even more like, to the point where it's like, this is a mountain too high for me to climb. So by the time they're getting to high school or college, it's kind of like almost like it's done. If I cannot even do 6th grade work, how am I going to manage college work? So within the schools, and I think everybody knows this, we have problems in the education system worldwide. Like there's a challenge in trying to get caught up. We're dealing with an education system that maybe sufficed thousands of years ago. We're not keeping up with the trends. Education is always left behind when we talk about innovation and bringing things forward. We're doing everything like we used to do before, yet, you know, the human race has evolved. But in terms of perpetuating self-helplessness within the classroom, I think we do it subconsciously, some consciously. And I can also say, like, if I have a student who has behavioral issues, chances are, if you push them to do the work, you may trigger behavior. So many teachers will just be like, I'm not going to deal with that. I have these other 38 kids I need to focus on. So you just leave Johnny in the corner doing what Johnny is doing. And that now becomes a problem because as Johnny goes forward, he understands that, okay, my behavior will get me out of work. So that's what he's going to do. And then he gets left back. So there's very many little intricate details within the classroom that can perpetuate the self-helplessness. And then as people get older, they're already left back. And that's when you see that they're unable to catch up because the gap is just too wide. So that would be where I would see our contribution to the self-helplessness of people within the classroom.
Tom, go
Now,
ahead. Then Austin, you can after Tom.
okay, thank you. Now, at the workplace, leaders and managers can be very good contributors to helplessness at the workplace. Particularly, if you have an unsupportive supervisor, for example, who is not able to follow through on some of their commitments, as a team, you're sharing your concerns and they don't escalate, they don't give you solutions either way. So the team starts feeling like no matter what they do, there will not be any positive output from this kind of intervention that they're seeking. The other way in which we contribute to learned helplessness as leaders or managers is also to contain or create conducive environment for unethical culture or poor practices, like, for example, bullying, sexual harassment at the workplace. So this can expose your team members to behaviors that can dramatically change their ways, their conduct at the workplace, particularly in terms of their commitment, particularly if these behaviors and the environments are inconsistent with their own values. For example, if you have a team member who has just joined a hospital, let's give an example that is quite typical in some of the hospitals in the regions, where you're told that when women go to deliver, they are harassed by the nurses, they are yelled at and told a lot of stuff. And here you are coming in from a standpoint of being an ethical medic, a great nurse, and the like. And so you see that the fact that this kind of culture has been perpetuated within the organization, it's in conflict with your values, and then you start feeling like, oh my goodness, no matter what I do, it doesn't seem like I'll change it because there are like 10 people here already doing this bad conduct and nothing is happening to them. So in a sense, we can contribute to this learned helplessness by having the wrong cultures, being unsupportive supervisors, for example, as well. And also, there are moments when being unsupportive can also mean being an abusive supervisor. We have sometimes seen supervisors who yell at their direct reports. If you go to some of the supermarkets, go to the banks, go to these service industries, specifically the hotels, you can find situations where a staff member is being yelled at by their supervisor right in front of a customer. This makes them feel like belittled and makes them wonder if they will have a great output in the course of their work as well. So in a sense, I do believe that supervisors and the leaders of the organizations can create subconsciously or deliberately environments that create learned helplessness within their teams. There are also supervisors and managers who can also keep lying to their teams. They will tell them, okay, fine, I'm going to bring you this feedback, I'm going to bring you these resources. At the end of the day, they get tired of asking, and then they just sit there and clock the bare minimum. So in a way, that also contributes to learned helplessness within the workforce. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Austin, you had your hand up, and while you're at it, could you also address the issue of adult entitlement syndrome?
Okay, so I wanted to give an example first of from one of the movies that is always repeated on DSTV. Coach Carter. I don't know if you've watched that movie. Carter is, for me, I find it a very good example of learned helplessness amongst teachers in terms of how to manage their classrooms and their students. And a coach comes and he finds the students are very rude. He finds the students are disrespectful, and the teachers have given up hope in terms of managing their behaviors. But in the same breath also, the teachers have low expectations of their students. So now when this coach comes, he has very high expectations of his students. He actually even gives them contracts to sign that if they are supposed to play in the basketball team, they have to sit in the front row of their classes and maintain a C+ grade point average. And the other teachers are not buying this. So for me, I found that as a very interesting example of learned helplessness in real life, especially amongst educational institutions. Now you ask about entitlement. I think for me, I would look at it differently in the sense that you have those who are entitled to their parents, and then you also have parents who are entitled to their children. So like, for example, when coming from an African family, there is this thing we call black tax. I don't know if you experience that in America. Black tax in the sense that you are an older sibling and you're taking care of your younger siblings. Then after that, now you find yourself also taking care of the children of your younger siblings, and the cycle continues like that. Huh? So in a sense, it's the ujamaa or taking care of each other. However, what happens is that for some people, you develop dependence on your grown children, and this dependence also becomes dysfunctional in the sense that you have excessive expectations of your family members. So that's one of the ways I would like to look at that in terms of entitlement. There are also other examples that you can think about in terms of the entitlement syndrome. Family members, you find that we do take care of each other emotionally and also spiritually. But then there are times, because of this taking care of each other, you realize that you have no boundaries, or you have no limits of expectations and outcomes, or you have no limits. You have people maybe who are taking more than they're giving in their relationships, or there are those who are giving and without getting anything in return, and you end up having burnout in that family situation. So that's how I would think about it quickly. I don't know if you want to add something, Posa.
No, it's just interesting. We had the black tax conversation last week, and we actually said this is the sibling conversation to that. And I'd like Saya's take on that. Saya, are you able to comment on two things? The Gonyoa attitude and learned helplessness, and because you're the pastor here, the role of the church in perpetuating learned helplessness.
So basically, your two questions are asking how I'll be short and then short again. Yes. There's no survival in these two questions. Okay, cool. So the Gonyo, for those who don't know what the Gonyo attitude is, you especially experience it when you go to among relatives, and especially in rural Africa, Kenya not an exemption, where people just expect you to give them money for no apparent reason. Some of them can become extremely demanding, almost vicious. You almost wonder if they are a Shylock or you gave them money. So the Gonyo attitude does really foster learned helplessness, because it perpetuates two mistakes or two fallacies. Fallacy number one is that help is external, and in this case is that only people from the urban areas, Nairobi, Mombasa, Kisumu, really have money and can make a difference, and that the individuals that our rural areas are dark and helpless, and that they need a savior to be parachuted in the form of your relatives coming from wherever, and that creates a perpetual land helplessness. And you notice it that many times things are happening on the ground. Individuals who are close to the situation and who could be able to pull together to help won't do anything until watu wa Nairobi waseme, ama watu wa Mombasa wakuje, ama ule relative, ule rich auntie wa ng'ambo atume pesa. And so it creates, whereas individuals could be able, it denies people agency. Individuals who've partaken of that attitude end up giving up their agency over their circumstance. The second thing it robs is innovation. It completely kills innovation. It's interesting that the food we eat comes from the rural areas, but there's seldom any innovation. The rural areas have more land, they have more space, but that mind space is so interfered with that individuals don't see, a lot of individuals who've partaken of the spirit of Gonywa then don't see any positive thing wherever they are. They believe any innovation, any help will eventually come from outside of Nairobi. So the Gonywa mentality fosters that. And let me sneak in a third one, which is a lot of Gonywa money is not invested. It is consumption. And therefore, it perpetuates an idea of dependence. It does not give people the pond, neither the tools to exploit the pond, but it always just gives not even a full fish, it gives pieces of fish to individuals. And with time, if people have been in this situation, they've not learned to exert their mind and their muscle sufficient to solve their own problems, and could easily perpetuate land helplessness. Religious institutions where theology does affect. Theology here is your belief about God, whether it's atheism or some variant of deism. Improperly done theology is really guilty for creating land helplessness. Ideas are very suspect, actually completely unbiblical doctrines like Panda Mbegu. Actually, Panda Mbegu, for those who are not aware, again, is the idea, plant a seed, give some money, some 310 shillings or some figure, some charismatic scam up with a promise that what will happen as a result is that God will then bless you. It is true that God blesses giving, but it is also true that God will never do for the human being that which he has placed within human power for them to do for themselves. I actually like a quote I saw earlier this week, last week, which is praying without action is actually superstition. To pray for God to do stuff without you really doing your stuff is superstition. God does open the Red Sea in the account of Exodus, but he expects the children of Israel to walk. He doesn't dispatch angels to lift them over the waters, the dry land of the Red Sea. He rains down manna, and then he expects them to go and pick it. So when you carefully read, for instance, the Bible, it always paints a picture of miracles being the result of divine intervention coupled with human cooperation. Jesus will turn water into wine, and he will ask the people to serve the water and then distribute it to the people. He doesn't just then make the water levitate to the tables at the end of the day. However, we see in modern time a sort of theology that only requires the divine to do and the human being to see it. Now that perpetuates land helplessness, so that individuals are not able to then begin with what they have from where they are and practicing what we call active waiting. Active waiting is the idea that as I wait on God to come through and to open doors, which only he can, I am required as a human being to do what lies closest, clearest, and nearest to me. But a theology that perpetuates land helplessness makes the individual just wait. It makes you, rather than work on your marriage communication, you go spend a whole week in a kesha. When will you ever be with that husband or wife? And you're busy binding spirits and demons and everything, when really what is needed is for you to go home and speak these things out and show love and show care and show concern. Your husband will not eat the prayers, he will eat food, and it is better if you are at home, your child is probably just needs better training. And rather than you going binding spirits and stuff, you just need to be present to give them discipline. And so a lot of things are ascribed to demons when the real demon is ourselves. As my grandfather would put it, there are two categories of demons. There are those that are prayed for to come out supernaturally, and those that just need to be beaten out because you're just being silly. But learned helplessness makes us only defer to the former and not look to the latter. So to expect the supernatural without the natural cooperating is to make God culpable within a realm of superstition. So yes, religion misused can lead to learned helplessness.
Riswa. That's all I can say on behalf of all the religious people who come after you. Okay, and so as is the norm on these forums, we have to offer solutions, and a special shout out to everyone who's appearing in the videos and not participating. Joseph Otin, I've seen the people behind you. No, I'm just saying I'm giving a shout out to the people walking behind you, and Karen and Saya. Shout out to Elder Kotonya, I've seen him behind there, so say hi. As is the norm, we have to offer solutions to the problems we present, and learned helplessness is no different. And so let's go through the solutions. What do you think we can do to make a difference, to stop the gonyo attitude, to stop the learned helplessness in all the institutions that have been presented here? And I think I'll start with Tom. Tom, tuanze na wewe, Tom Arodi.
Okay, asante. So in terms of mitigating learned helplessness at the workplace, I'll have written two approaches. One from the side of the team member, that is the employee, and the other one is on the side of the supervisor, which I will start with. So what can a supervisor do to mitigate learned helplessness at the workplace or within their team? First of all, is to create the right work culture. One that is not poisonous, a work culture that holds people accountable, has friendly policies, that is not allowing spaces for bullies or people who harass. Equally, it's also important for the supervisors to be alive to work boundaries. Allow your team members to have a work-life balance. You know, we have a lot of us within this call and outside who work in institutions or in teams where there are no boundaries of the work, where emails are shot into guys' inboxes without any stop. People wake up on Mondays and find like 40 emails in their inboxes. Ideally, a good work culture is where if people go home, people get off their emails. If they are working on their emails, they just need to send them during work hours so that not to put pressure on their team members. The other bit is also we also talk about now we have a lot of workplace WhatsApp groups as well. They also present that learned helplessness environment because of the pressure that comes with them. People are being forced into those groups. Official conversations are ongoing in those groups. They're expected to contribute at 10 in the night, 11 in the night. They're supposed to send all this kind of information and the like. The supervisors and the organizations need to allow their team members have a barrier between their work and the life that they live. The other bit is also for the supervisors to protect their teams, particularly to their direct reports, cut them some slack as much as is possible. When you go to management meeting or senior management meetings, take the fall. Take responsibilities on behalf of your team instead of throwing them under the bus. That way they feel that they have someone who is able to protect them when they are exposed at the higher levels or by their customers as well. And as a supervisor, particularly in these customer-facing organizations, the service industries, it's also nice to once in a while come to the front line, have an experience of what your staff members have, see how rude some of the clients can be, take them head on or address them on behalf of your team members so that they feel that they have someone who is behind them to make sure that they are not harassed and exposed to a lot of misery in their workstations. The other bit that a supervisor can do is to provide hope. Like we've all learned so far, is that helplessness is coming from hopelessness. So it's important for supervisors to keep the fire burning within their teams, give them some hope that there will be some improvements as far as is possible, and action some of the low-hanging fruits, shorten processes, for example, remove bureaucracies, let people see quick results on some of the issues that they're raising so that they can have some hope that something better is coming in the long term. Give them updates on what else you're doing to make their work a little bit better. The other bit is also for the supervisors or the agencies to give autonomy to as many as their staff as possible. Let their team members make decisions that they deem fit. Let them escalate issues that are only critical to you. Let them have one-on-ones with you to inform you of what they have done rather than to ask for permission. That way, when people feel empowered and having the autonomy to make decisions, then it reduces the feeling of helplessness within themselves. Also, as a supervisor, it's also important for you to have conversations with your team members about their desires. What are their career plans, and how can you help them get there? Because the learned helplessness can also rise from the feeling that there's nothing I can do to advance my career. The situation about unemployment makes people these days, they're getting stuck in roles and organizations which do not give them so much chance to grow. But you can give them an opportunity to grow by enlarging their roles wherever they are. You can give them stretch assignments without necessarily promoting them, but you can give them additional responsibilities that grow their professional muscles. That way people get excited about coming back to work and growing while at it. Now, for the team member who feels helpless, who suffers learned helplessness, one of the ways could be also to prioritize and plan. I think sometimes the workload is felt to be heavy because we do not know what is a priority and what can wait. So it's ideal for us to, as supervisors, to make sure that we allow our team members to prioritize and plan. And while at it, you can also go and let your business partners know that you're not able to meet certain deadlines. Can we shift them to another 2-3 days later or a couple of hours later? And learn to be able to say no. For example, if you're called for meetings, you're asked for a lot of assignments. If you don't say no, you get overwhelmed, and that learned helplessness arises in the end of it all. So I think in a nutshell, those are some of the ways in which at the workplace we can, both sides, mitigate the learned helplessness that could arise within the environment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tom. That was very comprehensive. Let's go to, I don't know, this is tiny, but what I'm just projecting here, because we've said Gonya, it's a Luo word for give me something, and these are the different, not all languages, but at least what people used to ask for something small in various mother tongues in Kenya. Let's go to Trish. How are we preventing, mitigating, protecting ourselves from learned helplessness? And you can capture both the able-bodied and able people versus the students with disabilities.
Okay, so let me try and capture it all in one the best way I can. So I would, from my professional lens as a teacher, I would say that for starters, get to know your students, right? Get to know the people sitting in front of you, not as, okay, these are students, but as individuals, human beings, and understand where the deficiencies lie. And then try to see if there's a way that you can support and help. And also just to make sure that your students know that they can come to you. If you have a student who's struggling, don't shout them out in front of the class, be sensitive and maybe approach them later after class or something like that, but don't shout them out, especially when you're dealing with middle schoolers and high schoolers. They're very sensitive. So stuff like that can make them go further into, themselves and not even bother to try. So my first thing would be mostly just to get to know your students and understand where their struggles lie. And then also give them accountability. The whole idea of giving them, having expectations for them so that they know that you actually care and give a damn enough to put, some responsibility on them. So let them, at the beginning of the school year, write a list. Where am I struggling? What help do I need? And how am I gonna take the help provided to get to where I need to be? So basically, you're making them give a solution to their problem, taking ownership of the issue, and then you provide the support the best way that you can. A lot of times teachers go above and beyond. We give our extra time, we work late through the night, supporting students. So this would not be anything new. The only thing now is you're in partnership with the student. The student has, figured out the issue, have given a solution to the issue that they know that they can cope with, and now you bring the supports to support them based on your professional understanding of what they need in order to rise to the occasion. Sometimes it just may not be possible because I can say for students with autism, some of them reach a plateau, and that means that they've reached where they just plateau, and it's kind of almost difficult to get them to the next level without intensive interventions. So now you start to look for ways that you can teach them how to transfer skills, because sometimes it's just a matter of being able to understand and make connections, and then you can catapult yourself from your point of plateau into moving over that hill or the barrier. So it's really mostly, and I think you can transfer this to other aspects of somebody's well-being aside from the classroom. Even I guess in sports you could do the same thing, and just let the person take ownership, but support them in being able to make rational decisions as to how they can get out of that rut. Because a lot of times, as mentioned, the definition always comes back to the perception that the person has. So you want to demystify that perception, like that they can't. Because I know when I was in school, I struggled with math. I really did struggle with math. And then when I went to college, it was like, oh my God, it's not that bad. I could actually do this. And then come to find out, I ended up being like a math teacher. So it's really just the perception that you have and that blockage. So as an educator, when you go to your teacher training and stuff like that, they teach you how to kind of like find different ways to help students break through and capture material. So maybe just sitting down with the student, get to know the student and understand what the blockage is. Sometimes it's a traumatic experience. And we know that trauma sometimes blocks passages in the brain where now you don't want to go to that place because you're scared of what may happen. So it's just being gentle with your students or being gentle with the person you're dealing with and letting them know that the support is here. I'm not going anywhere. I may be silent, but I am here. You have the most of the lifting to do. And they need to understand that. The heavy lifting is with you. I'm here to support you the best way I can, and I'm here to help you lift that load. So once that's established and that's understood, then you now chart the way forward in how you're going to partner with this person to support them to get over the hurdle that they're facing. So I think that's how I would, handle it. And like the speaker who was talking in terms of HR, we also have to understand that teachers are super overwhelmed, like we are overwhelmed. You can imagine standing in a classroom, 60 eyes looking at you, and each one is coming with a different, issue that they need support with. But when you look up, that support is not coming. So it's between you and those little children with that door closed for you to do what you need to do, be the superhero that you need to be. And that means taking care of yourself and understanding what your limitations are and doing what you need to do in order to be wholesome when you step into that classroom and support the students. So I think in my perspective and my educational experience, that's how I would, handle that with students who are struggling.
Thank you very much, Trish. That is awesome. Austin, to fungia ukurasa by telling us the tools you give on your as a psychologist and what we can borrow from you in terms of learned helplessness and how to help people we might self-diagnose out here as having learned helplessness.
Thank you so much. So one of the things that so if someone came to me for counseling, the first thing I would do is to do an assessment we do have scales or instruments of measurement that can give us an idea about the level of someone's learned helplessness. So once we are able to get that level in the scale, we then do a number of things. First, we can teach you about resilience. So there are some techniques in terms of teaching one about resilience. But again, we then have different models or theories of counseling that build the individual's resilience. So for example, you will hear about solution-focused brief therapy. You'll also hear about motivational enhancement therapy or cognitive behavior therapy. But in a nutshell, what these therapeutic models do is that the individual receives support and encouragement. We are able to explore the origin of their learned helplessness. So is it trauma? Is it associated with depression? Is this associated with their situations? Then we develop ways to decrease their feelings of helplessness. We also help them to identify the negative thoughts that contribute to this helplessness. We also help them to identify some of the behaviors that reinforce this helplessness. And then after that, now we are able to develop some goals and some tasks that we work with them throughout the counseling sessions. So we also teach them exercises that help to improve self-esteem, exercise that helps to challenge their emotions and their beliefs. We also try to address instances of abuse, neglect, and trauma. And we try to replace those thoughts and behaviors with more positive and beneficial ones. So of course, if you look at literature nowadays, we talk about learned optimism. So that's like the opposite of learned helplessness. And basically, we are saying that we are trying to look at issues, situations from an optimistic point of view. And we always have this belief that if I'm not able to change something positively, then I should be able to cope with that thing positively. You know, it's like, for example, you have a river and rocks. Sometimes the water cracks the rocks and passes through the water passes through the rocks. However, other times you find if the rock cannot be passed, then the water passes around the rock. So that's how we try to look at it. Learned optimism. Is there learned pessimism? It's now what we're calling learned helplessness. That's how the psychologists call it. It's learned helplessness as opposed to learned pessimism. Over to you, Posa.
Okay. Thank you. And I think because Saya usually is the one who closes the whole thing, is there anything I left out from the panelists? Trish, Tom, the triple T's, Trish, Tom, and Tom. Did I leave out anything? Is there anything you want to add? And then I'll give it to Saya.
I think for me, what I would say is to just reflect on our own situations. Are there instances that we have felt helpless? And is this helplessness situational, or did I learn to be in that situation? You know, there is an image of a horse that was tied to a plastic chair. I don't know if you've seen that image.
Yes.
And we say that sometimes the barriers that we experience in our lives are not physical. The barriers that we experience in our life are actually more cognitive or psychological. So it's just as individuals to reflect on that. Am I experiencing barriers, and what am I telling myself that is then influencing me to experience these barriers? So that's my take-home message as we wind up this session.
Tricia and Tom, do you have anything else you'd want to add?
I think from where I sit, what Tom Obulus has just said is applies clearly also to the workplace. So I'd urge everyone to reflect upon his remarks, his closing remarks, as we go back to our workplaces and make it better for everyone, for ourselves, and also for the people we work with. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Trish?
I just say I'd piggyback on the same sentiments that the two gentlemen before me have stated, and also just be human enough to internalize and just sit down and think to yourself, in the incidents where I have been helpless, what was the trigger? You know, how did I feel? And what would somebody have done different that would have made things better or less stressful for me? So just also looking at it from the perspective of the person who's struggling, and, you know, doing your part to be a decent member of society.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there any person on the call who has a burning question that we didn't? I think we covered it comprehensively. If there's anyone with a question, you can raise up your hand or type it in the chat. Otherwise, I'm going to hand it to Saya to give us the vote of thanks, and if there's anything I left out. And of course, being the pastor, if there's anything you're going to do going forward in terms of religious land pessimism.
Yeah, so I think every faith system needs to, if abused, can be a source of learned helplessness. And therefore, before you as an individual subscribes to any belief system, Shintoism, Buddhism, Christianity, Islam, atheism, deism, whichever, you're going, I think you need to subject it to the 4-part criteria. You need to question it to know, is it going to lead me to learned helplessness, or is it already leading me to learned helplessness? And the 4-part criteria is to ask, the first question is foundation. What's this faith system really, what's it really founded on? What does it really teach? What is its true foundation? And the core thing you want to know about anything's foundation is, what does it teach me about dependence? And does it teach me that I have innate abilities that can be enhanced by cooperating with the divine? Or does it just make me entirely reliant on the divine with no doing my part? And then what does it teach me about the control of my appetites, or whichever appetites they are, okay? And what does it teach about how I gain and use influence? So the foundation question has those 3 components: dependence, resistance, and influence. And you need to ask that. Then the second question or group of questions you need to ask is around the question of authenticity. Is this faith system real, or is it fake? And things that tend to lead you to remorse or to learned helplessness tend to be those that encourage the fulfillment of lusts. Now, lusts are nothing more but desires that are out of control. And by out of control, I mean they're being fulfilled in the wrong boundaries or outside of the right boundaries. And by so doing, they take on a whole characteristic that is wrong. So faith systems and belief systems that tend to promote the fulfillment of lusts and not the healthy pursuit of desires will, in the long run, teach or encourage or nurture one form of learned helplessness or another. Then the third last question that I think needs to be asked of every is a question of effort. How does this faith system deal with the question of effort? And the question of effort is simply, am I doing the best with what I have, where I have? So most faith dynamics have an ultimate hope of sorts, okay? And so you need to ask, is my faith system, all the way it is taught or lived out, either, let me use a Christian dynamic, are we too heavenly minded that we have no earthly good? Or are we too earthly minded that we have no heavenly good? Proper or healthy faith systems tend to put a good balance between preparing for the ultimate while having your feet on the earth and living in the reality. And what that normally would lead to in a healthy way is putting in the best of effort where I have, being a steward of everything that I have. And then the final question you need to ask about your faith system is a question of legacy. And legacy is 2 things. Legacy number 1 is the echo your life or your experience leaves in the spaces you have left. And legacy also is the story that is told about, the story that will be told about your present when it is only a story. In other words, a year from now, this call, this Zoom meeting we're having about learned helplessness will be a story. It will no longer be a present thing. And by the words we have chosen, the ideas we have shared now and chosen to share now, it is already influencing the story that will be told about this session. So there's going to be the legacy of this call that it will have upon its attendees and presenters. And so one thing you need to ask about your faith system, therefore, is what story is it making me, what story is it leading my life to be able to tell when all that will be able to be told about my life is a story? And that doesn't mean when you're dead only, that also just means when you're moved from a year from now, 2 years from now, what kind of story will it be told? And those 4 letters for remembrance spell the word LEAF: legacy, effort, authenticity, and foundations. And I think if a faith system as an institution is always asking itself these 4 questions, what are we doing to the foundation of our adherence? What are we doing about building the authenticity? What are we doing about steering them away from that which is fake or real? What are we doing about the effort? What are we doing about the legacy they are building? It'll help that the faith institutions, whichever ones they are, will not become places for remorse, but they will become places for strengthening. And all of those, in philosophy, we say you can subject to 2 questions, which is internal coherence and external application. Like this thing, this faith is teaching me, is it logical and put together? And does it correspond to life as we know it? I think if more believers did thinking, then life would be spared some of the bizarre things that have been done in the name of faith. However, never judge a philosophy by its abuse, but judge it by its logical outworking. And that's me putting off my pastoral hat and now just wearing the hat of co-host and thanking every person. Today I was the only contributor who was not a T. Posa has a T name she doesn't like. So thanks Trish, thanks the 2 Toms, and thanks host T, let's just call you that way, for each one of you. Very insightful, very, very, very insightful. I've been seeing questions drop on the side about how to be in touch with some of them. I'm sure Posa is going to be able to address that. So thank you guys for bringing in your expertise from the various years and places you've been. It's all for granted. Thank you, the entire people who joined on this call and asked the questions on the side, and those who just were here. It was, if for nothing else, it's an indication that you want to take agency over some area or facet of your life. Please do feel free to share. This will be available on our YouTube channel called Authentic Dialogues. It's also available on our Facebook page, Authentic Dialogues with Sarah Jackson. So share the link, spread the word. It will bless someone else, I'm sure. Next week, Posa, that's next week, right?
Yes.
What's our topic next week again?
Caregiver fatigue.
Yes, caregiver fatigue. There's a special category of individuals we need, and caregiver is not just people taking care of sick relatives. You could be giving various forms of care. So if you know people or somebody who's been going through this and who just needs to either learn, or who's going to, maybe you're having people who are aging, or there's a recent accident, or there's someone you're giving psychological or not necessarily physical support, it will probably be something you want to hop on and learn. Otherwise, we hope this continuously gives you tools to be able to pursue your life with clarity, with relevance, and with authenticity. And as always, we wish you all the very best, and go ye and conquer. Thank you once again.